Well, this is interesting because okay, so the first thing you gotta say with all of this is because like I have people messaging me all the time and they're like Pulse or PulseX, and it's like, okay, well, like I got to give the pros and cons because markets do what markets do, right? Like the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent, right? That's something everybody hears, right? So markets can do irrational things for very, very long periods of time, longer than you can take it. So if we're looking at like, pros and cons, okay, well, same community, right? Same founder. So a lot of things are the same. So then there's the use cases, okay? So the first thing that people say is that ETH has outperformed Uniswap, so Pulse should outperform PulseX. Layer ones typically do well. This is the average return of a layer one. This is the average return of a DEX. Okay. It's apples and oranges, though, because Uniswap didn't come out until many, many years after Ethereum. Okay.
Yeah.
Uniswap also had a different token distribution. They gave away a lot of free coins. They had VCs lock up money. It's not exactly the same as PulseX. PulseX is also deflationary with a buy and burn. Very, very different from Uniswap. So it's like you can't really compare. Like it would be almost like comparing, like, do you think it would be fair if like, okay, Dogecoin, the network, right, processes Doge transactions, is extremely hyperinflationary. Is it fair to compare the returns of Doge with PulseChain that is deflationary? Like it doesn't make sense, right? So just because something is similar to another thing in its name does not necessarily, or like it's the category you want to label it does not mean that its actual function is the same, and you should judge it based on past history of other coins. Like it doesn't matter. And here's a perfect example. We've had many copies of Hex. Okay, what have all of them done? They've all basically went to zero. Well, if the code was basically the same, or maybe even like some people have said it's a slight improvement, right? Maybe they get rid of the OA's coins. Maybe they lower the inflation. Maybe they raise the inflation, something like that. Has the price performance done anything like what Hex has done? No. So is it fair to just say, like, to lump things into categories like that? So I'd start off by saying no. Secondly, Pulse and PulseX are similar but different. So Pulse has a burn, okay, and the burn is cool. Like burns are awesome, right? We see it with EIP 1559. It reduces the inflation on Ethereum. The reason that with EIP 1559 it's so good is because gas fees are very, very expensive. If gas fees are very inexpensive, it wouldn't be burning very many coins. Okay, so comparing even EIP 1559 with PulseChain is not really fair because the gas fees for PulseChain are going to be possibly a 10,000th of a penny to start. I mean, it's going to be very, very, very low. I mean, even if it's like bullish, let's say it's like a thousandth of a cent or something like that. You know what I mean? So it's not going to be doing the kind of buy and burn or burn that a lot of people think. So, and that's based off transactions. Okay. Now you have the actual way the buy and burn works. So not only does PulseX burn, but it buys. Okay. And so the two things that, like Richard Hart says, what matters, right? It's not market cap or whatever. It's like buying and holding. And in PulseX's case, it buys and removes from the supply. So it's essentially holding forever, right? It's like essentially like coded that it holds it forever because the coins are destroyed. You can't buy them anymore. So a hack can't access them. They're gone for good. So it's like the best kind of holding. And so some people say, well, isn't the internet, like wouldn't the internet be worth more than, the things built on it per se? And it's like, one of the things you could say is like, all right, well, if you have land and someone builds a house, the house adds so much more value to the can add so much more value to the land than just the land, right? Yeah. And so the thing is that when you let's say you're a whale, okay, you're a whale and you have $10 million on PulseChain, right? Doing pretty good for yourself, right? Let's say you move that $10 million to another wallet. Maybe you paid a fraction of a penny. Okay. So you burned a little bit of Pulse. Okay. Awesome. Cool. Now you're one person, but let's say you buy that 10 million of USDC on PulseX, and let's say you buy whatever. Okay. If you're buying PulseX, awesome. If you're buying Pulse, awesome. Like, it doesn't matter because it's based on the volume, and it's going to buy and burn. And it's so much higher than what the burn is. The buy and burn is so much more, like exponentially so much more, that from like a mathematics perspective, if you're looking at the game theory is superior for PulseX. Does that mean that Pulse is not going to outperform PulseX? No, it doesn't mean anything. It just means that the game theory is better. But if people run with the narrative that layer ones are so good and that they always outperform, they can outperform. You know, it's funny, the Federal Reserve says that they have to take inflation seriously, because if everybody believes that inflation is going to be high in a year, it's going to be high in a year. Like, you know, manifesting works in multiple ways. So if the consensus is that like Pulse is the valuable token, it will be valuable, you know? So you can have the better game theory and stuff, but if every time like PulseX is being bought and burned, like somebody's like, man, I really need Pulse, and then they sell their PulseX for Pulse, you know, it could theoretically do better, even with a great buy and burn. The thing that I love about PulseX is that, you know, like I've said it before, and people really like this, that PulseX has a built-in God whale, and the PulseX God whale has bigger bags than the actual God whale. And why is that? Because the PulseX is a function of the total volume. So if the God whale comes and he's like interacting on the decks and stuff like that, the PulseX God whale becomes stronger because it's based on volume. So it's more buy and burn. And let's say PulseX is bearish, right? If PulseX is bearish, then more coins are being bought and removed from circulation. And like the transactions on PulseX and the testnet have like died off drastically, and it's still over, I think, 65 billion coins, you know, which would be, you know, 6.5 million at the 10,000 to 1 rate, right? And so you imagine just a 10x, that's $65 million that would be bought and removed from the supply. So it's pretty interesting. And I mean, like, you know, K4K said things like, well, yeah, if we just have PulseX people not put too much liquidity in, like the buy and burn could get ridiculous. Well, you know, my counterpoint to that is that, like, you know, tragedy of the commons, like people are going to do what they think is best for them. They're not going to think about like the greater good. Like everybody just, you know, you ever hear people like, we're all going to buy Hex at midnight on the first of the month, and we're going to pump the price, you know, like that shit never works. Because someone's like, oh, are you? So
yeah. Apparently, you've never been a part of a coordinated pump and dump group, sir. Those things, they work for about 4 hours. And,
yeah, exactly. And they get counter traded.
So what are so interesting point about manifesting PulseChain manifesting the being the winner or whatever that means in that way. So bringing people in, like, what's the best onboarding tool? It seems like PulseChain is the best onboarding tool into the ecosystem. PulseX is like, you know, how you use the ecosystem in a lot of ways, but PulseChain is what really draws people in.
I think honestly both do, because one of so at that party that we had not long ago, Trevor had his Trevor Sarver in the community. He had some of his friends from the States come in. They were complete no coiners, and they were just like, oh man, all these like retired people from crypto, you know, and we're all decked out like in, you know, Pulse and PulseX and Hex gear, and, you know, of course everybody's shilling to them, you know, and one of the guys was like, you know, this kind of stuff, it does seem interesting, you know. He's like, I'm a traditional finance guy, you know. And I said, okay, well, come here. And, you know, I brought him to the computer and I was like, hey, look at this. And I showed him, you know, like how to become the market maker, you know, how to get fees on that. And he's just like watching the money, like, you know, pile in and stuff. And he's like, man, it's really interesting, right? Like if you're into finance, like it's more than just like sitting and hitting buy on a stock. Like actually becoming E-Trade, is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And even if like that's not the optimal play for you, and it's truthfully not the optimal play for most people to be the market maker. A lot of people are better off just like finding those assets and holding long term. And we talked a little bit off camera that had the staking feature not existed for Hex, maybe we wouldn't be as successful as we are, right? So sometimes the best thing that you can do is to just hodl long term and not just like try to give away your coins and stuff like that.
Well,
someone says this guy didn't sacrifice for PulseChain. Bro, I probably sacrificed more than your entire net worth for PulseChain.
But he's the PulseChain maxi, so he could be the Godwell under a different name.
It's funny, like I'm saying, like what I'm saying is that like PulseX has better game theory, but PulseChain could do better. I win either way, honestly.
We got Koki said you got PulseX training on Twitter. I certainly hope so. That would be cool. That'd be cool. I'm gonna manifest it. Awesome. We're both gonna manifest the Tendies right now. All right.
I believe in that. I believe in that. And I think it's I think we have a pretty cool narrative. And like the thing is like PulseChain and PulseX and stuff, it's very interesting to even, people outside of our little community. I don't know if you saw recently, but I've been interacting with DIY investing. I'm going on his channel, not long. He's got like 90,000 subs. He never really covered stuff in our ecosystem. And recently he, flipped the switch and he's like, I see it. I know the layer one is the play. And he sees all the things being built on PulseChain. I showed him fiat. We sent him coins and stuff like that. Send him like a good amount so he could yield farm and, try everything out and make some videos to show people like what's going on. We got 3-second block times. I mean, it's great.
Wow.
I don't even hold any fiat, and I use it all the time on testnet, and it works great. Just like Aave, it has a good user interface and stuff like that. We're going to have a lot of options. I think, liquid loans eventually is going to be out, and, we're going to have all the DeFi stuff, right there for everybody. And the biggest thing is going to be the ultra low fees, right? Because even, have you used layer twos?
Not directly. No, I haven't. No.
Layer twos are awesome. You can do stuff for extremely cheap, but
I feel like I've used services that use layer twos, but I haven't actually just like did it. Yeah, went through one. Like what's a good one for people to use?
I like so Arbitrum's like maybe the more popular one, but I like Optimism. I've had like less bugs. Like Optimism's ran like pretty smoothly. Honestly, like it's fairly cheap right now. You could do transactions for like, cents,
But the counterparty risk.
The thing is like, if you're using a layer two, it's the same as using another layer one. It's like you're using the same risks. Like you're doing the same bridges and all that stuff. It's like remember like when Richard was saying like, oh, I don't want to do a bridge with admin keys. And then he's like, oh, never mind. There's just not a lot. There's not a ton of bridge software, so you're going to have the same potential attack vectors on a layer two that you would have on a layer one. The difference is like on a layer two, like Optimism, you're spending ETH for gas, whereas on PulseChain, you're spending Pulse. Because of the way that like Optimism would work, it can't get as cheap because there's no dilution of supply. So with PulseChain, the dilution of supply means that you can do transactions for essentially free. Right? Like when I show people like a transaction on testnet, I'm like, okay, let's say that, this is the starting price, the 10,000 to 1, and then it's like 0.0000001 T pulse, right? Like that's it's such a small number, it's free, right? If I said, hey, you could have 500 transactions or 1,000 transactions or 10,000 transactions for 1 penny, in your mind, that's free. Like, sure, you might be paying a fraction of a cent, but that's basically free. So, when we see these kinds of things, when it's essentially free to trade or free to use networks, the transactions go up. There's more trading volume. That's good for PulseX. So
I'm excited for $1 transactions. I want $1 transactions.
If there's $1 transactions, like everybody in the chat is going to be stupid rich. But I don't see that. Like even Matic, I think Matic maybe got to like 25 cents a transaction or something in the bull market. I can't remember exactly, but it was very, very cheap in the beginning. I remember like the first time I used Matic, it was like 0.1 Matic would give you like thousands of transactions. And then eventually you had to start buying Matic because, you know, the gas was going up so much. Everybody's like spending like crazy amounts of gas because like you don't care, you know? Like if I said, oh, RHMax, you're gonna have to spend 5 cents to get your transaction through. Even if the base transaction is 10,000th of a penny, like 5 cents, you don't give a shit, right? So you're just like 5 cents, I'll take it, you know? And so people are just hitting like max gas, you know, like fast. So
yeah. Well, so back to the original question as well. Like what are the ways to make money? You know, you can make money on PulseX via the token going up, but within PulseX, why are people going to use it? Like why is all these different features going to get triggered? Like what are like single side staking, LPing, like what's the best thing?
So like I think it's cool that they're adding in the buy orders, like limit orders and stuff like that. We're going to have to see how it shakes out. Like right now, there's not many pairs to provide liquidity on. And the interesting thing about like liquidity is some people might be better. Like, so if you have if you have equal amounts of 2 coins and you don't know, you have a good thesis that like one of them is going to do really, really well. Or maybe you have the thesis that both of them are going to do really, really well. Well, if your thesis that they're both going to do really, really well and they're going to move up together, then, you know, you might as well pair some liquidity together. The problem with that potentially is that if everybody thinks like that, then there could be so much liquidity that the market doesn't move at all, right? You just basically stay still because, you know, there's a guy coming in with $1 million. Like if somebody buys $1 million of Hex, price moves. Right. If the liquidity is 350 million on PulseX and somebody comes with $1 million, the price ain't going nowhere. So it kind of is a double-edged sword with that. The good thing could be that like maybe whales that provide they don't want to get rid of the coins and they just dump the incentive coin. And the interesting thing is that even incentive coins that are inflationary and just kind of inflate forever, some of these coins do pretty good. I mean, like I was looking the other day, I was like, let me just see, like it's, you know, we're like near the bottom of the bear market. Like, let's see what, you know, Sushi Swap and Quick Swap and like all these other like coin inflationary DEX coins are doing. And they're all like multiple X's off the bottom and stuff. So like, you know, it wouldn't take very much for, you know, RH's incentive coin. I hope he just names it something else other than incentive coin. Like if he gives it a cool name, like
it's gonna party token. We had party token. You don't like party tokens?
Yeah, it's gonna.
So is it going to be one token or is it going to be a selection of tokens you get to choose to earn based on whatever community you're interested in and stuff like that?
So that's the PRT token. That's not the incentive token. The incentive token is what you get for yield farming. The PRT token would be like what you get for single-sided staking, which would be like, so let's say there's like a small community, right? Pulse, Floki, Shiba, Inu, Dachshund, or something like that, right? So like they're like, we have
real coin. That's a real coin.
It probably will be. That's why I was like just throwing tons of different names.
We make it as dumb as possible so this thing actually happens.
Yep. And so like, let's say they have 1 trillion coins, right? And they're like, okay, we're going to give 1 billion to PulseX stakers early on. And so the people staking PulseX. Now people think they're going to get like tons of money from that. So like, let's say, what would you say is like the most popular meme coin in our community right now? Maybe Pulse Dogecoin?
Yeah, as far as meme coins.
Okay.
Right now,
So imagine Pulse Dogecoin so right now they don't have a ton of volume. Okay. The original Pulse Doge win, I looked the other day, it had under $800 in volume, daily volume. That's pretty bad. So these shit coins, basically, I mean, no offense to them, but a little offense to them, you know, they don't have like tons of trading volume. They don't have tons of liquidity and stuff like that. So if you're giving away tons of coins to multiple people that are staking PulseX, the coin's not going to do very, very well. And so I think a lot of people think like, oh, staking PulseX is going to give me, you know, like any kind of rewards. And it's like, it's probably not going to give you much, you know. Maybe it gives you a little something. Like and I've talked about this before, the move might be to just accumulate all these shit coins in the hopes that one of them does a Shiba Inu moonshot and does a 100,000x or something like that. So you're just
Well,
accumulating them. Maybe it's worth $100 and you just say, fuck it. Like I'm just going to hold this. And then maybe during the bull market, it has a crazy run at some point and you can sell it.
Well, on the incentive token too, is, you know, that if that's the dump token, why would you want to earn it? Shouldn't you want to hold it for something? I mean, is that staking? Is that just like
the thing is like, okay, so you're like applying logic to, you know, memes and stuff like that. Like, why would anybody buy Pulse Dogecoin to begin with? You know, like if he gives it an interesting name, it's another RH token. Maybe it's not his, maybe it's his least favorite token, but it's still an RH token, right? And so maybe somebody says, I want to own most of this. The other thing is that people can add value in any way. I've thought of multiple ways to do it for the, you know, the coin. Like if he had like a homepage or whatever and said, okay, if you want to, or even the community could do this, right? You could make a very popular PulseChain website and then have like banner space for like ICOs or whatever, and say it's going to cost 10,000 incentive token to list for the month. You know, now you have a burn mechanism for incentive token. And so let's say the website takes 2% and burns 98%. Now it's, you know, it could be offsetting the inflation and stuff like that. But even on the coins that don't offset the inflation, even in the bear market, they're up multiple X's from the lows. So these things can run, you know, like even the incentive token, which you think nobody wants, a whale could want it. And it could go up 100x. You just don't know. You just don't know.
So you can see a lot of pairs.
Some people, it might be better to just like buy and hold, you know, for a while. And then when they think that it's doing really, really well to sell, other people will dump it as soon as they get it. And they may or may not outperform the market.
I can hear RH now. I don't want to see cheap incentive tokens anywhere.
It's quite possible.
So maybe a lot of it depends on the liquidity pairs too. Do you think there'll be like incentive token Hedron, incentive token, you know, XYZ?
It could be. So like typically when you have like something like the incentive token, the most reward. So like if you wanted to accumulate incentive token, you would pair incentive token with something else that looks pretty bullish, like Pulse or PulseX, right? And because the thought process is incentive token is going to be inflationary, PulseX is going to be deflationary. You're probably going to sell a lot of your PulseX or trade a lot of your PulseX for incentive token. And as a result, instead of getting 30, 40% APY, we'll give you 90% APY in the incentive token. So if somebody was bullish on the incentive token and they think it's near bottom, maybe they provide liquidity there and just accumulate a ton of incentive token until the next run up, right? And then they can offload that. So there's going to be people playing the market. I mean, that's what happens when you have, you know, crazy markets with tons of people with tons of liquidity. So,
yeah.